Hey there, and welcome to the Parallax After Effects tutorial. In this section, we're going to show you how to take all the elements we created in section 3 and animate them in 3-dimensional space. Let's take a look at all the images you'll need for your parallax. Now, here in section 1, getting started, we're going to go to our tutorial images, and then here in our cutout folder, we're going to go to our landscape. Now here you're going to find all 4 landscapes that are already cut out. So you can see they're saved as PNGs, so we've done all the work for you. As well as the people are already cut out from their backgrounds as well. All you have to do is click and drag them into After Effects and your work is done. Cool, we'll show you how to turn all these elements into 3D layers and then how to add a camera to add movement and create the parallax effect in After Effects. This is going to be so much fun, and you can use this technique on any one of your composite images, guys. As long as you have a bunch of different layers that are cut out with transparent backgrounds, you can make them into a parallax. Alright, let's get into our tutorial. Hey guys, and welcome to the Parallax Effect After Effects tutorial. Now in this tutorial we're going to show you how to create a parallax effect from all of our elements included in your download. So as you can see, we're in After Effects right now. We'll just give you a real quick tour of the program just in case you guys are relatively new to After Effects. Alright. Well, here on the left you'll see a project window. This is where you load your files. So we're going to be loading all of our images into this project window here. Here's our composition window where we're actually going to see what's going on. Down here we have our timeline where we're going to keyframe, and here we're going to have our layers that are actually going to show up in our composition. Alright, so we're going to go nice and slow, and this is going to be a really fun tutorial. It's actually not that difficult to do. It looks like pretty difficult, but it's actually pretty simple. So I feel good that you're going to be able to follow along really well. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is create a new composition. So I'm going to go to composition up here, and we're going to create a new composition, and we'll just call this parallax effect. Now here's where you want to enter in your settings for your composition. I'm going to choose the settings that we would normally choose for uploading a video online to YouTube, or just a standard width, a standard size for a video. This is going to be 1920 by 1080. Now these should be your standard settings. Everything like this should be already loaded in, and everything looks good. Our background color we want to be black, resolution we want to be full, frame rate 29.97, everything looks good. So we're going to hit OK. Alright, and here we can see we've got a view here and then a view here. Let's go ahead and set it back to where you might have it standard. Okay, so we can see here's our composition. We have our actual screen here, which is our composition, and then our different layers. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do, we need to get our images into After Effects. Alright, so if you wanted, the easiest way I found is just to click and drag. So we're going to go to our Pro Tutorial, Parallax Tutorial Images, and then here in the cutout folder, there we go. Now we've given you a bunch of things to play with around here with the headshots and things like that. So if you want to play with these in After Effects, that's, well, there for you too. This tutorial we're going to be showing you how to do the landscape. Okay? So Tutorial Images, Cutout, Landscape, and then we have landscapes and we have people as well. So let's go ahead and hold down Shift and click and drag from this folder right here into After Effects. So you can see I'm dragging over right into the project folder. Okay, there we go. And here we can see we have parallax cutout 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now these are actually numbered by how they're going to appear in the camera as well. Alright, let's go ahead and start off with number 1. This is our sky. We're going to click and drag this down to our timeline. There we go. And now we can see this is what our sky looks like. Now I purposely made all the files quite a bit larger than we need. So you can see I'm able to like click and move this around in our composition window. So let's take a look at this. Here's our parallax part 1, PNG, the sky. We're going to click this little down arrow, and then here in our transform, this is where we can look at things like scaling. So if we wanted to scale down our sky, this is how we would do it right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this in place. Let's get in number 2. I'm just going to click and drag this down. Alright, there we go. Put it right above there. Alright, and number 2, I'm going to hit V, there we go, for the move tool, and then we can click and drag. There we go. We can see that's a bit of mountains there. And all these are just exported from Photoshop as PNGs. Alright, there's number 3. We're going to pull this. There we go. Bring this in as well. You can see this is our mountain off to the right hand side. And they're blending together really well. And then we have 4. We're going to bring that in as well. Alright, and these are the rocks in the foreground there. Okay, so we're able to create really any type of composition that we want. And right now all these layers look about like they do in Photoshop. Right now we don't have any 3D, we don't really have any depth. So the next thing we need to do is turn those on, because what we're ultimately trying to do is create a 3D effect where we're going to push some of these layers back in Z space. So you have your X-axis, your Y-axis, and your Z-axis. Z is like forward and back. Okay, so in order to do that, I'm going to go right over here till we see this little cube, and it says 3D layer. Allow this layer to be manipulated in 3 dimensions. So we're going to go ahead and click that on for all of these layers, and that makes them 3D layers. So now I can play around with these in X and Y and Z space. So I can move this up or down, or in and out, or this is our Z space here. I can move this, as you can see, forward and back. Okay, now to make this easy for us, because it can be a little bit difficult, like the forward and back, like I don't know exactly where it is. To make this a little bit easier for us, we're going to go right down here where we see one view. I'm going to click there, and we're going to go to 2 views horizontal. There we go. Okay, we've got our active camera here, and then this view we want to be top. Okay, now the top view is really nice because it allows us to see very easily what's going on with all of our different layers. Okay, so as we select different layers, let's say we select this layer here, I can simply hover over it, wait till my cursor says Z, and then I can push this back into space. So we can see these are the mountains. I can push these back into space. Alright, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to start off with 1, which is our sky, and we want to push this way back, okay? We want to push that way back because it's sky, right? It's going to be the farthest away. Alright, then 2 is going to be the second farthest, so we're going to click and push that way back as well. Alright, there we go. And 3 looks pretty good where it's at. You can see this is going forward and backwards there. Okay, and then here we have our rocks, which we actually do want to be pretty close to the camera. Alright, great. Now it's totally up to you to decide where you want your composition to be and what you want your actual image to look like. Now the next thing you might notice is that some of these things don't exactly look right. Like our sky, for instance, is much too small. So let's go ahead and click on 1.png, which is our sky. We're going to click this down arrow here, and then here in our scale, I'm just going to click and drag this up, because we do want to scale our sky up quite a bit. Alright, and then we can bring this up or down. Now, it's not a huge deal if these things are too large. You just don't want them to be too small. There we go. Alright, our sky looks great. Now let's click on 2, and we're just going to bring this over to the left. So it's simply click here and drag this over to the left. Alright, cool. Everything looks good, and now we've got a pretty nice composition looking in After Effects. Alright, let's go ahead and close that down. So how do we actually start looking around in our composition? Well, that's where the cameras come in. So to create a camera, I'm going to go here to Layer, we're going to go to New, and then I'm going to go down to Camera. Alright, now basically this camera is how you create the parallax effect. So your type here, you want to be a 2-node camera. Okay, that's just standard here. Everything looks really good. Our preset, we're going to use 15 millimeters. This is the same like it would be in a normal camera. This would be a wide angle, this would be a zoom. We're going to go somewhere right in the middle, about 50 millimeters, looks pretty good. And hit OK. Okay, let's go ahead and bring our camera up. There we go. And now we can see moving our camera around our image allows us to get that parallax effect. It makes everything look as though it actually is three-dimensional. Now, as I scroll in and out, you can see we can actually like zoom past these rocks in our foreground. There we go. And move to our midground here, and then even into our background. There we go. And we can pull back and zoom back out again. So the real key here is that we've created a bunch of different layers that have a lot of depth in space. So we have this foreground, our midground, there in our back, and then finally our sky. Let's go ahead and move some of these things around just so we have even more options. Alright, we're going to push this off to the left a little bit there. Alright, very nice. Cool, so we can see moving our camera. I'm just going to scroll with my mouse back and forth, which allows us to have different views with our camera. There we go. So if I go off to the left, we're going to miss a little bit of the side, but I can go off to the right a bit more, allowing my parallax effect to really come in. Alright, well, let's go ahead and stick to right about there for now. That looks pretty good. Now the next thing we're going to do is bring in some of our subjects into our composition. Alright, so let's go back to our Finder. We're going to go to People, and we're going to go ahead and bring some of our subjects into After Effects. So let's do cutout1.png. Again, we're going to bring them in here to start off with. Now this can be a little bit confusing because we have so many layers here, right? So we have our jump cutout and our landscape. So let's hold down Shift, click on all of our landscape, and then I'm going to click on this group here. Alright. Landscape. Hit enter. And there we go. We'll click and drag them from right here into our landscape group. Alright. So we've got one person. Let's decide. And we've included all these for you that, you know, like whichever ones you want to include in After Effects, it's totally up to you guys here. Let's just drag a couple in here. Alright, I like that guy as well. Alright, let's just start off with these four. We'll create a new group. Alright. People. Hold down Shift, click those, and then drag them in to People. Alright. So you see we have our background here. Now let's go ahead and look at bringing our people in to our image. So we're going to shift click all of those. I'm going to bring these on top so we have all of our people in. Alright, so let's go ahead and scale these down. So I'm going to hit S for scale, and here you can see it brings up scale for all of these. And now because they're all selected, I can click here and drag this down, and it's going to scale all of those layers at the same time, which is exactly what we want. So now that they're about the right scale, everything looks pretty good. We can start pushing things around in Z space. Alright, so again, we're going to hit our move tool again. Alright, and now, there we go. It's time to start moving some of our elements around in Z space. But before we do that, remember, you've got to click on this button here, this 3D layer. These have got to become 3D layers, there we go, in order for us to move these around in Z space. Alright, there we go. Alright, and here we can see I'm able to move my character around in the actual space. She can come up in front of those people and then be pushed even further back. Now it depends on how far back I want my subject to go. If I want her to go further back, I can have that happen, but there's a certain point at which she's gonna, you can see she's going behind my sky here. So let's just click those three layers. I'm gonna drag those back in space a little bit more. Alright, there we go. Wait till my cursor has that little O next to it. Alright, and then I can drag her back into space right there. Alright, and place her up over there. Now, as I move my camera around, you're going to see I'm able to go past my subjects here in the foreground. Let's just move our reference point for our camera here to our background. There we go. I'm able to go I'm playing with my Y there. There we go. I'm able to go past these subjects and zoom into the background. Alright, let's just move our cursor till that has a little circle next to it. Alright. There we go. Past my subjects and into my background. Very nice. Alright, let's hit Command Z to go back to our view that we had before. Command Z a couple of times. Alright, so now we can see our subject. This subject is way far in the background, and she looks really good back where she is. Now we can scale her a little bit as well. So let's hit S for scale. Alright, and we're just going to scale her down a little bit more. Alright, let's go to our next subject, which is right here. And we're going to do the same thing for our next subject. So let's go ahead and push this person back into space. Alright, there we are. And we'll place them right back over there. Now this person we want to be in our foreground, so he's going to be actually pretty close to the front here. Alright, and then this person here we want to push back into our background as well. Alright. There we go. Alright. So now we're able to see our composition. As I move around in space, we're getting the parallax effect. Alright, so we want to start off at a place where our camera and everything is lined up with our image. So we want to start off again with our camera. Let's go ahead and open up our camera. Transform. I'm going to hit this reset button and it's going to go back to where it was when it started. So now that we have our camera in the place that we want, let's go ahead and redo our background just a little bit. Again, remember we pushed these back way back in space, right? So because we did that, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we scale them and size them appropriately. Alright, so let's go ahead and move that over. Alright, that looks pretty good. There we go. Our sky, let's hit S for scale on our sky. We'll go ahead and scale up our sky quite a bit. Alright, and we can bring that up in height. Alright, now our mountains in the foreground, these guys, we'll hit S to scale those up because we want these to be quite a bit larger there. Okay, and we'll go ahead and bring those up and get that. There we go. Now it's okay if it pushes off the screen a little bit. That's just going to give us more options when it comes time to actually compositing everything together. You know what, let's pull this down a little bit. There we go, and this one will pull down a little bit as well. This is so cool because we're able to completely create our composition here within After Effects by moving all of our elements around individually. And this guy we want to be right up here in the foreground. Alright. Cool. That looks good. You know what? I'd like this layer here to be, I'd like this to go all the way to the ground. In other words, I don't want to see that black there. So let's go ahead and scale it up a little bit more and bring it up in height a little bit. Alright, and this guy will just bring down in our y-axis. Cool. Alright, and then our rocks we're going to bring up just a little bit. Alright, great. So there we have it, guys. This is basically the making of our parallax composition. Now you can place different people in here. We've provided you a bunch of people to kind of play around and see what you like. You know what? We're going to do a real simple version here. This guy, I'm actually just going to delete him. Her we'll put over here on the right hand side. Alright, so we'll just do these three people for our little tutorial here. There we go. But when you're doing it, you can do as many as you'd like. Okay, so everything looks good. This was, basically looks like a two-dimensional composition. except we have a lot of options now with our camera. Okay, so now it's time to get to the actual parallax effect. So if you're able to follow along everything we did up until now, you're pretty much done. The only thing we have left to do is animate our effect. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on our camera. There we go. Now we can see our camera, we can move around anywhere we want to move it around. But I'm going to start off, here in my position, we're going to start off creating a keyframe. Now this keyframe basically decides, it points out exactly where the camera is, and it makes a note of that. So you can create a keyframe by clicking on this little stopwatch, there we go, where the position is. And now we can see we have that little keyframe right there. So that means at this point in time, the camera is going to be exactly right there. Now, if I move this keyframe right over here, then that means at this point in time, the camera will always be right there. Now, here's how keyframe works. Basically, if you have one keyframe at the beginning and another keyframe at the end, the camera is going to automatically move between those two keyframes. Okay, so what I would recommend is getting your camera set exactly where you want, create a keyframe like we just did, and then move that keyframe further along in time. That way you have a point that you know is going to be perfect. That point you know is going to be the point you want. And then it's time to start playing around with your camera. Okay, so let's hit C for our camera, and we have a few different camera movements here. We can pan, we can zoom, we can have free control, and we can rotate. And you can see these are right over here as well. Unified, orbit, track XY, and track Z. Alright, so if we start off by rotating around, we can see we're able to move our camera in space just like this. Alright, let's hit C again, and we can see we can move that down, and C again, and we can zoom out. Okay, now I just did a couple controls, right? We did a little bit of an orbit, we did a zoom, and we did a pan. Okay, so it looks quite a bit different than it did when we started. But keep in mind we've got a keyframe here at the end that keeps track of what it looked like when it started. And now, because we made that change here in this timeline, it shows up as a keyframe here. So here in our slider, let's just go ahead and click here and drag that because we don't need much of it. We don't need it to animate past that. Here in our slider, what we're going to do is as we go throughout time, it's going to animate from one place to another. Alright, so it's going to take this keyframe and move to that keyframe. Now let's hit this play button here, and it's going to render each frame individually, moving all of our elements one at a time. There we go. And when it's done, it should play back smoothly. Alright, cool. Now if you wanted to go slow, it's simple. Just click your keyframe and just push it back farther. So let's hit this play button again and see how that looks. So again, it's going to render out each frame individually. So it's going to get those. If it's got that green line on the top there, it means it's rendered out. Alright, so once all that fills up with green, we're going to see a really nice active view of what our actual parallax effect looks like. There we go. And there we have our parallax effect. And I can take this and scrub between any part of our document. Now let's say for here I want to move the camera. So C for the camera, we can zoom in. C again, we have a free orbit tool. There we go. Alright, and now I'm going to hit V for my move tool. I'm going to bring my camera down, and I'm just going to move this in. Let's say in this case we wanted our camera, there we go. In this case we want our camera to kind of come around and come back in that direction. So this time it's going to back up instead of go forward. Alright, so let's hit the play button and see what that looks like. So it's going to back up and then start to reveal our subjects here in the foreground. And everything exists in Z space. Beautiful. Alright, let's let it render right through and see how that looks in real time. Pretty quick, but we can see that effect looks really cool. Again, if you want it to be slower, all you have to do is simply, there we go, that looks so cool. All you have to do is simply push this slide out to the right a little bit. Alright, let's get one more here. We're going to hit the reset button. So now we have, this frame is the exact same as our last one here. Alright, let's just bring our movement. This time we're going to go pretty subtle with it. Alright, so let's hit play. It's going to render out. And you can see you don't need a crazy camera movement in order to pull off the parallax effect. You can have a very simple camera movement and it's still going to look really good. As long as you have your different layers that show that you have different there we go, different planes in space. There we go. So you can see even that looks just absolutely killer. Alright guys, and that's the parallax effect. Cool, let's go ahead and pause it. I'm going to hit the space bar real quick. Alright, I'm going to go to layer, we're going to go to new, I'm going to go to adjustment layer, and then here in our adjustment layer we're going to go to effect, and I'm going to go down here to our, let's see, I don't use I don't use After Effects. Alright, let's go up to our curves. There we go, our channel. Let's go to our blue channel, and I'm going to pull in some blues into our shadows, which is going to help add some blue into the shadow of our people as well to help color match. So before and after. Let's pull that down. Pull some yellows into our highlights, just like we do in Photoshop. Alright, cool. And let's animate it one more time, and then I'm going to show you how to export out and render your parallax video. Alright guys, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and show you how to export out your video. Alright guys, so now we've created our parallax effect. It's time to render out our video. So we're going to go up to File, down here to Export, and go to Add to Render Queue. Alright, here's our render queue. We can see our settings here. We've got 1920 by 1080. Where it says Output to, you can go ahead and click here and decide where you want it. We're going to choose our file format. It's going to be a .mov, parallax effect on my desktop. Hit save there. Everything else looks good to go, and we're going to go ahead and hit render. Alright, it rendered out. Let's go ahead and see if this works in our Finder. Alright, cool. Let's go ahead and load up our Finder window, parallaxeffect.mov. We'll double click there, bring it up in QuickTime, hit play, and there we have our awesome parallax effect rendered out in video. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this After Effects tutorial. I hope you have tons of fun creating your own parallaxes with any images that you can think of.